Have you watched the second of my lectures in my series Biblical Hebrew 101, my lecture on vowels and syllables, and would you like to practice what it is that you learned in that lecture? Or are you somebody who already knows Hebrew vowels and consonants but would like some practice pronouncing the Hebrew vowels? Then if either of those is you, then why don't you stick around as we practice vowels and syllables in Biblical Hebrew in this episode of Theapologetics. Hi, this is Chris Date, and welcome to Theapologetics, where every other week I discuss a wide variety of theological issues and show how a properly biblical worldview can help defend the historic Christian faith from its critics. Join me as we think through what we believe and why we believe it, and not something else. All right, so today we're going to practice the material that I presented in Lecture 2 of Biblical Hebrew 101, my lecture on vowels and syllables. By way of reminder, this lecture series is based on Pratico and Van Pelt's Hebrew grammar called Basics of Biblical Hebrew, 2nd edition, but you do not need to have that grammar in order to take advantage of and learn from this lecture series. What we're going to do in this practice series is, first of all, review the content of that second lecture on vowels and syllables. We'll ask some questions to try and recall the knowledge that we learned. Then we'll go through our vowel and vocabulary flashcards in Quizlet, the sets that I gave you links to in the suggested study at the end of that lecture. And don't worry, this time I have figured out how to make the font much larger so that you can see the Hebrew in those flashcards better. And then finally, we'll go through the workbook exercises for chapters 2 and 3 of Pratico and Van Pelt's Basics of Biblical Hebrew, which are the two chapters upon which this lecture is based. So, let's go ahead and dive in with a knowledge check, a review of the content that we presented in the second lecture. I'm going to present these questions just like in the last practice session. I'm going to show you these questions, give you a moment to answer, and then I'll put the answer up on the screen. The first question is, which syllable in Biblical Hebrew is emphasized or stressed in most words? The answer, of course, is the last syllable, which in linguistics is referred to as the ultima. In case you're curious, the last syllable in a word is called the ultima. The second to last is called the penult, and the penultima. Penult or penultima. And then the third to last syllable is called the antepenult. And in Hebrew, it's the ultima, the last syllable, that is usually emphasized or stressed. And if you'll recall from Lecture 2, if in many grammars, including your Pratico and Van Pelt grammar, if the stress or accent is not on the ultima, the last syllable, then the vocabulary will indicate where the stress belongs with an accent mark over the top that looks like a leftward pointed caret or arrow. All right. What are the three classifications of syllables in Biblical Hebrew? In Lecture 2, I presented the word devarim, which by the way means words or things or matters. And it's got three syllables, de, va, and rim. And the question is, how do you classify each of these three syllables? Well, the last syllable in this case, because it's the syllable that receives the stress or emphasis, is the tonic syllable. That means it's the syllable that receives the emphasis or stress. So it's not devarim, and it's not devarim, it's devarim. So the emphasis is on the last syllable. That syllable, therefore, is called the tonic syllable. The syllable immediately preceding the tonic syllable is the pretonic syllable. And the syllable immediately preceding the pretonic syllable is the propretonic syllable. What is an open syllable? What is an open syllable? In Biblical Hebrew, an open syllable is one ending in a vowel. What is a closed syllable? Well, this should be fairly easy after having answered the previous question. A closed syllable is one ending in a consonant. So an open syllable is like ba, right? It starts with a consonant sound b, ends in the vowel sound a, so it's open. Whereas a closed syllable would be something like bat, which starts with a consonant sound b, has the vowel sound a, and then ends in the consonant sound t. Okay? What is the system of vowel pointings called in Hebrew? Now, this is not something that your grammar and that a lot of biblical Hebrew grammars cover. They will just usually refer to these as vowel pointings or whatever. But I think it's good for you to know how these are referred to in Hebrew, and so I'd like you to learn what these words are. And in the Hebrew, the system of vowel pointings is called nikud, which is it means a pointing or a dotting. But what are the individual markings themselves called in Hebrew, right? So nikud is the system of pointings, but what is any given mark called? Or what are the marks called? They're called nikudot, which is plural of nikuda, which means dot. So nikudot means dots or points. So the system is nikud. The markings are called the nikud. They're called the nikudot. What are the classes of Hebrew vowels? What are the classes of Hebrew vowels? This is something of a tricky answer because there are two possible answers. One answer is the three-class system A, I, and U. A class, I class, and U class. Your grammar, however, uses a five-class system, the A, E, I, O, and U class system. Obviously, in either case, they're named after the English vowels A, E, I, O, and U. But how then are the E and O vowels classified by those who count only three classes? Right? So in the five-class system, you've got some vowels that are in the E and O classes, but in the three-class system, those classes don't exist. So where do those vowels go that are in the E and O classes in the five-class system? In the three-class system, E and O vowels go in the I class and U class, respectively. So in the five-class system, the segol, which is the three dots in the shape of an upside-down triangle, in the five-class system, that's an E class vowel, but in the three-class system, that's considered an I class vowel. What are so-called reduced vowels often called? Your grammar, the Basics of Biblical Hebrew by Pratico and Van Pelt, calls them reduced vowels, and many others do, but many others, including the ones that I learned in, are called composite shewas. Composite shewas. What is the function of the dagesh forte? So recall that in Lecture 1 you learned the dagesh lena, and that hardens the otherwise soft sound of begad kafat consonants. In Lecture 2 I introduced you to the dagesh forte. Remember, dagesh lena means weak emphasis, dagesh forte means strong emphasis. So how does the dagesh forte provide strong emphasis or indicate strong emphasis? The answer is that it doubles the consonant that has it. Okay, so if you see a consonant with a dagesh forte in it, and you'll recall that we went over some rules on how to tell whether a dagesh is a dagesh forte. If you see a consonant with a dagesh forte in it, that consonant is doubled in both transliteration and syllabification. All right, so I just said a moment ago that I introduced you in last lecture to I taught you in the second lecture how to tell whether a dagesh in a begad kafat's consonant is a dagesh lena or a dagesh forte. So in begad kafat's consonants, when is a dagesh forte? After vowels and at the beginning of words. All right? So if you have a begad kafat consonant and it's after a consonant sound, like a syllable that ends in a sheva, a silent sheva, so after a silent sheva, the next consonant, if it's a begad kafat consonant and it has a dagesh, that's a dagesh lena, because it's following a consonant sound.
But after a syllable that ends in a vowel, or maybe that's another way to put it, after an open vowel, or sorry, after an open syllable, a pathach consonant that has a dagesh forte. But after a closed syllable, a pathach consonant with a dagesh in it, that dagesh is a dagesh lena. What are so-called vowel letters often called? So, just like your grammar refers to composite shewas as reduced vowels, so too your grammar refers to something that it calls vowel letters, but which a lot of other grammars call what? Matres lectionis, which means mothers of reading. And the singular of matres is mater. So what is a spelling called when it's missing an expected mater? So if the normal spelling of a word has one of these vowel letters or matres lectionis, the mothers of reading, but that word is spelled without that expected mater, what is that spelling called? It's called defective writing or spelling. Similarly, or rather conversely, what is a spelling that has its expected mater called? It's called full writing or spelling. And as I explained in Lecture 2, the full and defective spellings have no impact on pronunciation or meaning. What is a silent syllable closing aleph called? Right, so if you have a syllable that ends in an aleph and that aleph is silent, what is that aleph called? It's called the quiescent aleph. And it's transliterated, you'll recall, in parentheses. So ordinarily an aleph is transliterated using a rightward pointing apostrophe-like symbol. When it's a quiescent aleph, that symbol is placed within parentheses in transliteration. When is a shewa silent? Now, I actually gave you a simple rough and ready rule, and then I gave you a number of expansions upon the rule or applications of the rule. In your best summary, how would you summarize when a shewa is silent? Well, here's how I've summarized that slide that I presented you. It is silent after short, unstressed vowels, when it's the first of two in succession, and when it's at the end of a word. In other cases, the shewa is going to be vocal. Now, you don't have to fret too much about remembering these rules. It is something that you should be fairly familiar with, but you'll find that as you develop some proficiency with Biblical Hebrew, it will become fairly natural to determine when a shewa is vocal or silent. You won't have to be sitting there and going through your list of rules to try and figure it out. But at least initially, try to apply these rules and figure out whether a shewa is silent or vocal. What vowel, and there is only one, is pronounced before the consonant that it's on? So you recall that all the vowels, I'm trying to put an asterisk in my mind next to the word all. Ordinarily, let's put it that way, ordinarily vowels are pronounced after the consonant that they're on. Right, so if you have a bait with a hirek under it, the little single dot under it, the first sound is the b sound of the bait, and the second sound is the e sound made by the hirek. So b, e, b. That's the case with all the consonants, all the vowels, except one vowel is sometimes pronounced before its consonant. And this question is, what is that vowel called when it is pronounced before its consonant? And the answer is the furtive pathach. Remember, furtive means stealthy or subtly or surreptitiously, something like that. And a furtive pathach is sort of snuck in before the consonant sound when it's a furtive pathach. So then when is the pathach? That's the little horizontal line under the consonant. When is the pathach a furtive pathach? When is a pathach furtive? The answer is under a hey with a dot in it, a chet, or an ayin at the ends of words. So not under the hey with a dot in it, or chet, or ayin in the middle or beginnings of words, but only at the end. At the end of a word, a pathach under a hey with a dot, a chet, or an ayin is a furtive pathach. And so, take for example the word ruach. Ruach is three radicals, three letters, but only one syllable. It's a reish, which produces the R sound at the beginning. It's the mater shurek, so that's the vav with a dot in it, and that's a vowel sound. So that vowel sound combined with the reish makes a ru. And then the last letter is the consonant chet, and there's a pathach under it. But that's not rucha, 2 syllables, it's ruach, 1 syllable. All right, so that's an example of where you find the furtive pathach. Now, I mentioned that at the end of words, the hey will sometimes have a dot. So the question is, when does the hey at the end of a word contain a dot? And the answer is when it's a consonant, not a mater. So you remember there are a few matres lectionis that use the hey, right? There are a few vowel sounds that use the hey as the vowel letter, or the mater lectionis. And those are always at the ends of words. So in order to distinguish between that mater and a hey that actually is pronounced at the end of a word, they put a dot in the hey to indicate that it's not a mater. It's an actual consonant to be pronounced. What is the dot called? Because remember, gutturals, which includes hey, cannot take a dagesh. So we know that this dot that looks identical to a dagesh isn't in fact a dagesh. So when the letter hey contains a dot at the end of a word indicating that it's a consonant, not a mater, what is that dot called? And the answer is mapik, which means a bringing out, a causing to stand out, a revealing, a highlighting, something like that. When is the vowel hirek long? Remember, hirek is the vowel, the little single dot under the consonant. When is hirek long rather than short? Because remember, it's usually short, but there are some cases when it's long. When is it long? In open syllables or when stressed. Similarly, when is kibbutz long rather than short? Again, just like hirek, kibbutz is normally short, but there are some circumstances in which it's long. What are those circumstances? When it's in an open syllable or when stressed, just like with hirek. So that makes it easy to kind of remember. What is the O class? What is the? I don't want to give away the answer. The little t under a consonant. When that's an O class vowel, what is it called? What is it called when there's an A class vowel that is a little t under the consonant? But when it's an O class vowel, it's identical in appearance. What is it called? It's called a kametz chatuf, a brief or momentary comments. So recall that the A class vowel that looks like this is called kametz, and it's pronounced ah. But in the O class, it's pronounced o. When is a kametz chatuf, when is that vowel sign, when is that nikuda a kametz chatuf rather than a normal kametz? So another way of asking this question is, how do you determine that this particular nikuda, this particular marking, how do you determine when you see it whether it's the kametz in the A class or the kametz chatuf in the O class? There are a few rules for figuring this out. One is, in most closed unaccented syllables, this nikuda is a kametz chatuf. Before the O-class composite sheva, called a chataf kametz, before that composite sheva, this nikuda is a kametz chatuf. And in the word kol, meaning all, that is a kametz chatuf. Now, I don't have this on this slide, but just remember that when there's a small literal, or a small vertical line called a meteg right next to the kametz, that's telling you that it is a kametz, not a kametz chatuf. All right? In the middle of a word, when are when are these diphthongs, I, oi, and ui, when are the diphthongs in the middle of a word? The answer is when the yod has a dagesh or a shava. So if the yod has a dagesh or a shava, then you know that a syllable is being closed, but the yod by itself does not make a sound normally. It usually is the consonant that begins a syllable. So if it's ending a syllable, as is the case when it has a dagesh or a shava, then you know it's the diphthong. Similarly, in the middle of a word, when are the diphthongs av or ow, and eve or ew, when are they diphthongs? Remember, how you pronounce these diphthongs depends on how you've chosen to pronounce your vav. And the answer is similar when the vav has a shava. The reason it's not the exact same answer as the previous question is because when the vav has a shava in it, or sorry, a dagesh in it, it's the shurek. It's the vowel u. So it won't close a syllable. But when a vav has a shava under it, it's closing a syllable, or it can be closing a syllable, in which case these are diphthongs, not not a number of different sounds together. All right, so with that review out of the way, let's go ahead and do some flashcards, beginning with the nikudot. And just as a reminder, I have figured out how to make the text bigger in the flashcards. I've also figured out how to hide the ads, which is nice. So this should be a little bit better of a flashcard experience, and I want to begin with the nikudot, and then we'll move on to vocabulary. So here is, so what I've done is I've set these flashcards such that we're only answering with the English. So we're being shown the Hebrew and we're answering with the English. And you'll recall that I encouraged you at the end of lecture 2 to practice in both directions. So we're only going to be doing it in one direction here, but in your personal practice, I want you to practice in both directions. And then also I've shuffled the flashcards so that this won't be in any particular order. Now, with the nikudot in my slides, I'm able to get rid of the consonant and replace it with a dotted circle, just representing any consonant, because I don't want you to associate the vowels with any particular consonant. Unfortunately, Quizlet doesn't allow me to do that. So I'm using the consonant bait to mark all the vowels, or I'm marking it with the vowels. So ignore the fact that it's a bait. That's not what's important. The point is there's a vowel marking the bait, and that's what we're going to try to answer together. So this the vowel that has 3 dots in the shape of a triangle under the consonant, and then it's followed by a hey. So this is the E class long vowel that is a mater lectionis called segol hey. The segol hey makes the sound of the letter E in better, excuse me. It's transliterated using the English letter E with a caret over the top of it, and it's always at the ends of words. The hey mater is always at the ends of words. Let's see if I got all that right. E class, long. I don't know if I mentioned that it's long. I mentioned that it's a mater. It's segol hey. It's pronounced like E in better. Oh, so it's transliterated E with a caret over it, or occasionally E and then followed by an H in parentheses, and it only appears at the end of words. Okay. Next up, this vowel under the bait that has a small horizontal line on the left and then a vertical line of 2 dots to the right. This vowel is a composite shewa, or reduced vowel. It's the A class composite shewa, known as chataf pathach. It makes the sound of A in amuse. It is transliterated as an A with a half bowl on top of it. I think that's it. I got it all right. This vowel, 3 dots in a diagonal line under the consonant. What is this vowel? This vowel is kibbutz. Kibbutz. This is a U-class vowel. It's usually short, sometimes long. It makes the sound oo, like the U in rule. It is transliterated as a U, the English letter U. When it's long, it has a line over it. I think that's it. Yep. All right. Next vowel is the 2 dots in a horizontal line under the consonant. And what vowel is this? This is the vowel tsere. Tsere is an E-class long vowel. It makes the sound of A, like the E in the word they, A. It's transliterated using the English letter E, and because it's long, it has a line over that E. All right, got it. This next vowel that has a dot under the consonant followed by a yod, what is that vowel called? That's the mater lectionis known as hirek yod. So this is an I-class long vowel. It's a mater lectionis, a mother of reading, or a vowel letter. It is pronounced like the I in machine, so E. And it's transliterated using the English letter I with an upward pointed caret over the top of it. And this is an unchangeable mater. So when words undergo changes because of changes to form, this does not change. It is, however, sometimes spelled defectively. So a word that has this hirek yod in it may be spelled without the hirek yod, but it doesn't change when the form of the word changes. There we go. Next up, the little T under the bait, under the consonant. Now, this is a bit of a trick question, which may give you a little clue as to what this is. So this is one of either 2 vowels. This is either the A-class long vowel comets, or it's the O-class short vowel comets chatuf. If it's the former, if it's a comets, then it is it makes the ah sound in father or ball, and it's transliterated using the English letter A with a line over it. If this is the O-class short vowel, comets chatuf, then it is pronounced like the O in the English word roll, and it is transliterated using the English letter O. There we go. This vowel, the 2 dots in a horizontal line under the consonant followed by a hey. This is the E-class long mater known as tsere hey. The tsere hey makes the sound A in like the letter E in they, just like a tsere. It is transliterated using an E with an upward pointed caret, or an E followed by an H in parentheses, and it only appears at the ends of words. Okay, this vowel, 3 dots in the shape of an upside down triangle under the consonant. This is the short E-class vowel called segol. It's pronounced like the E in better. It's transliterated using the English letter E, and that's it. Next up, the single dot under the consonant. What vowel is that? This vowel is the short or sometimes long I-class vowel called hirek. The hirek makes the sound of the I in the English word bitter, or the I in the English word machine. So it or E doesn't, you're going to hear people pronounce it differently, and they'll sometimes even pronounce it in different ways in different contexts. If they're speaking quickly, it'll be I. If they're speaking a little bit more, if they're enunciating more, it'll be E. This is transliterated using the English letter I if it's short, and I with a line over it if it's long. Okay. This vowel, the small horizontal line under the consonant, this is the short A-class vowel known as pathach. The pathach makes the sound of A in ball, and it's transliterated using the letter A. Next up, the 3 dots in the shape of an upside down triangle under the consonant, followed by a yod. This is the long E-class mater segol yod. Segol yod is pronounced either like the E in better, or the I in the E in the word they, or a, either way. And it is transliterated using the English letter E with an upward pointed caret on top. And like all yod maters, this is unchangeable. Okay. Next up, the little T under the consonant with a vertical line of 2 dots next to it. This is the O-class reduced vowel or composite shewa known as chataf kametz. The chataf kametz makes the sound of the O in commit, and it's transliterated using the English letter O with a half bowl on top. Next up, a little T under the consonant followed by the consonant hey. This is the A-class long mater known as kametz hey. The kametz hey is pronounced like the A in ball, so ah, and it's transliterated using the letter A with an upward pointed caret on top, or an A followed by an H in parentheses. And like all hey maters, this appears only at the ends of words. Next up, the vowel, which is a small dot on the top left corner of the consonant, followed by a yod. So actually, this is not a vowel. This isn't even a mater. So this is a little bit of a trick. Remember when I told you at the in the lecture 2 that my flashcard set has both the nikud and the diphthongs in it? Well, this is a diphthong. So it's the vowel holum followed by an unpointed yod. This is the diphthong oi. Okay. Next up, this is a vowel marking that is the shape of an upside down triangle, 3 dots next to a vertical line of 2 dots. This is the E-class reduced vowel or composite shewa known as chataf segol. And the chataf segol makes the sound of A in amuse, or E in, I don't remember what example. It's a hurried E sound. I don't remember what the example was. We'll find out in a second when I flip the card. and it's transliterated using the English word E, or sorry, the English letter E with a half bowl on top. So metallic, that was the word, right? So it's the hurried E in the word metallic. Chataf segol. All right, next up, this is a vowel, not a diphthong. And the vowel is the vav with a dot on top. So what vowel is that? Comes right after a consonant. This vowel is the O class long mater known as holam vav. The holam vav is pronounced like the O in roll, and it's transliterated using the English letter O with an upward pointed caret on top. And it's unchangeable like all vav maters and yod maters. Next up, this is not a vowel. This is a diphthong. How is this diphthong pronounced? The T under the consonant followed by a yod, an unpointed yod. Or, if it's in the middle of a word, a pointed yod. A yod with a dagesh or a shava under it. In those cases, this is the diphthong pronounced I. All right. Here again, we have a diphthong, not a normal vowel or nikuda. This diphthong is a hirek under the consonant, followed by a yod, followed by a vav. And either this is at the end of a word and the vav is unpointed, or it's in the middle of a word and the vav has a shava under it. In such cases, this diphthong is pronounced either you, if you pronounce your vavs like a W, or eve, if you pronounce your vavs as a V sound. Here we have another diphthong. This is not a normal nikuda or vowel. This is the pathach, the little horizontal line under the bait, followed by a yod, either unpointed at the end of a word or with a dagesh or shava in the middle of a word. In those cases, this diphthong is pronounced I. Back to vowels. This is a small dot on the top left corner of the consonant, followed by a hey. This is the O class long mater known as holam hey. The holam hey is pronounced like the letter O in roll, and it is transliterated using the English letter O with a caret pointing upward on top of it, or the English letter O with a line over it, followed by an H in parentheses. And like all hey maters, this can only appear at the end of a word. Next up is this vowel. The vowel is the vav with a dot inside of it. What is this vowel? This is the U class long mater known as shurek. It's the only mater that isn't named after the consonant that it modifies. So, you know, we've talked about holam vav, holam hey, pathach hey, and so forth. But this is the one vowel, the one mater lectionis, the one vowel letter that has its own name, and that is shurek. The shurek is, it makes the sound of the letter U in rule, U, and it's transliterated using the English letter U with an upward pointed caret over the top of it. And like all vav maters, this is unchangeable. Or sorry, yeah, this is unchangeable. But it can be left out in defective spelling. Almost done with these nikuda, and then we'll nikudot, and then we'll switch to vocabulary. Here again, we are not dealing with a vowel, but a diphthong. It's the shurek that we just learned, followed by a yod. That at the end of words, that yod is unpointed. In the middle of words, if it has a shava or a dagesh, in those circumstances, this diphthong is pronounced ui. Or we. Now we're back to vowels again. The vowel in this case is simply the dot on the top left corner of the consonant. and this is the vowel holum. The holum makes the sound of the letter O in the English word roll. It's short, it's O class. Sorry, it's long, it's O class. And it's transliterated using the English letter O with a line over the top of it. So forgive me for my stumble there a moment ago. The short O class vowel is that matres. The long O class vowel is the holum, and it's pronounced like the O in roll. And it's transliterated using the English letter O with a line over it. All right? This is a vowel, not a diphthong. The vowel is the two dots in a horizontal line under the consonant, followed by a yod. This is the E-class long mater called tsere he. Tsere he. The tsere he makes the E sound in the word they, so a, and it's transliterated using the English letter E with an upward pointed caret on top of it. And like all yod and vav maters, this is unchangeable. What is this nikuda? This is not a vowel, but it is often taught as vowels, or with vowels. It actually represents the absence of a vowel and is sometimes either silent, sometimes vocalized. It's the shava. The two little dots in a vertical line under the consonant is called a shava. It is not in any class because it's not a vowel. It's not short. It's not long. When it's silent, it's not transliterated at all or pronounced at all. When it's vocal, it makes the sound of the letter A in amuse, that hurried, amuse. And it is transliterated when it's vocal as either a superscript E, an upside down E, or an E with a half bowl on top. And then lastly, we have one more diphthong. The diphthong in this case is the comets under the consonant, followed by a yod, followed by a vav. At the ends of words, the vav will be unpointed. If this is a diphthong in the middle of a word, the vav will have a shava under it. And in such cases, this diphthong is pronounced either ow, if you've chosen to pronounce your vavs like a W, or I, av, if you've pronounced your vavs like a V. All right? So there are our nikudot. Now let's practice vocabulary with our flashcards. All right? So, again, these are in a shuffled order, and we're going to be showing the Hebrew and answering in English, but I want you to practice your flashcards in both directions, Hebrew to English and English to Hebrew. This, try to pronounce it, is the, I'm just trying to kill a few seconds so to give you time to try and come up with it yourself. This is the word ale, and it just means God. Either God with a big G or God with a little g. What is this word? This is the word Yisrael, and it means Israel. It's not even a word with a meaning. It's the name Israel, which does mean he strives with God or God strives. But when people say it, that's not what they're thinking. It's sort of like Bowman, the last name Bowman, right? That's referring to somebody who works with bows or something like that. That's its etymology, but that's not what it means. Nobody thinks that when they're saying the name. It's the same with Israel. Jacob was named Israel by God because Jacob fought with the theophanic appearance of God. So he was named Israel, whose etymology means he strives with God or God strives. Next up. Bayit. Bayit. And this means house or household. Next one. Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim. Which means Jerusalem. I mean, it doesn't mean Jerusalem, but it's the name Jerusalem. So when you see Jerusalem in Hebrew, in the English translation of the Hebrew, the underlying Hebrew is Yerushalayim, which I think sounds a lot cooler, but it is harder to pronounce for us English speakers. All right, next up. Moshe, or Moshe. Moshe. This is the name Moses. Next one. Eved. Eved. And this means slave or servant. Next up. Now this one is a little bit of a trick question, because you are not to try and pronounce this word. This is the name of God. It is often, when read aloud, what is spoken is not the way of pronouncing this word, but rather the word Adonai, which means Lord, for which reason our English translations often translate this as Lord. Some translations say Jehovah. You'll often hear it referred to as Yahweh. But don't read it that way, especially if you're in the company of Jewish people. You'll want to speak it as Adonai, which means Lord. Next up. Yom. Yom. And this means day. Just as a reminder, though, not always 24-hour day. Be a day like a long period of time. In my day, blah, blah, blah. Next up. Melech. Melech. King or ruler. Next up. Very, 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 very common word. Elohim. Elohim. And this is the plural form of El, so this is gods, but it very often refers to the one God of Israel. Next up. Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim. This is Egypt. Next up. Eretz. Eretz. This is ground or land or earth. Next. Davar. Davar. And this means word or thing, like a matter or an affair. Not a sexual affair, but like get your affairs in order. That's the kind of thing it means. Next up. Shame. Shame. And this is name or reputation. Next. Av. Av. And this means father or ancestor. Next. Shana. Shana. Year. Next. Bane.
Bain, son or descendant. Next, sus, sus, meaning horse. Second to last, Adam, Adam, meaning human, humankind, or Adam. And lastly, Paro, Paro, meaning Pharaoh. All right? So, now that we have done our flashcards for the nikud and the vocabulary, and now that we have refreshed our memory on the concepts that we learned in that second lecture, let's go ahead and do some workbook exercises. All right? Sorry about that. There we go. All right, so this is remember the Pratico and Van Pelt Basics of Biblical Hebrew has a workbook that you can get in digital form. That's what I'm looking at here in Logos Bible software. And Lecture 2 covered the chapters 2 and 3, so we'll go through the workbook exercises for chapters 2 and 3. This first exercise says, give the name and classification for each of the following Hebrew vowels. For the purpose of showing the position of the vowel, each appears with a consonant bait. The first vowel is identified by way of example. All right? So in the example, they're showing you the 3 diagonal dots under the consonant, and they're telling you that that's the vowel kibbutz, and that its classification is short U. All right? So next one down, and this is going to be, you know what, let me see if I can make this larger. That's probably better, at least. Yeah, that's about as good as I'm going to be able to get it. Okay, so number 2. The horizontal, and I'm going to try to go a little bit more quickly. If you want to try and figure these out yourself, and I'm going to quickly for you, just pause before I give the answer. But we're already at almost an hour, I think, and I don't want to take too much longer. So this is this horizontal line under a consonant. This is a pathach, and it's the short A. Next, number 3, the 3 dots in the form of an upside down triangle under a consonant. That is a segul, and it's a short E. Number 4, the single dot under a consonant. That is a hirek, and it is a short, although sometimes long, I. We'll scroll down. Number 5, 2 dots and horizontal line under the consonant. That is a tsere, and this is a long E. Number 6, the dot on the top left corner of a consonant. That is the holum, and it is a long O. Number 7, the 2 dots in a vertical line under the consonant. That's a trick question. This isn't actually a vowel. This is called a shewa, and I guess you'd say not applicable. It isn't in a class, and it's not a vowel. We'll scroll down to number 8. This is the vertical line of dots next to a horizontal line. This is the compound shewa known as chataf pathach. I'll try to squeeze it all in there in one. There we go. Chataf pathach. And this is a reduced A. Number 9 is also the vertical line of 2 dots, but this time with a upside down triangle of 3 dots next to it. This is also a composite shewa. This is the chataf segul, and this is a reduced E. Scrolling down to number 10,
This is also the vertical line of two dots, this time with a little T next to it. This is, again, a composite shewa known as pathach. Sorry, not pathach, comets. All right. I'm going to get rid of that H just so you can see the whole thing on your screen. comets. And this is a reduced O. Number 11, the single dot under a consonant followed by a yod. This is a mater lectionis known as hirek yod. And this is a long I. Number 12, the vav with a dot over the top of it. This vowel is a mater lectionis known as holam vav. And it is a long O. Scroll down a little bit. Number 13, the vav with a dot in it instead of on top of it. That vowel is also a mater lectionis, a mother of reading, a vowel letter, and it's known as shurek. It's the only mater lectionis that has its own name. And it is a long U. Number 14, the little T followed by a hey at the end of words. This is a mater lectionis known as comets hey. And it's a long A. Number 15, the horizontal line of two dots followed by a yod. This is a mater known as tzere yod. And it is a long E. This next one, the triangle of dots under the consonant followed by a yod, this is also a mater. This one is segol yod, and it's also a long E. And then finally, number 17, the little T under a consonant. This is either a comets or a comets chatuf. If it's a comets, then it's a long A. If it's a comets chatuf, it's a short O. All right, next up, transliterate the following Hebrew nouns. The first noun has been transliterated as an example for the exercise. Note that the vowel comets chatuf does not appear in the following exercises. So that's good. We won't have to figure out if a comets under a consonant is a comets or a comets chatuf. All right, they've done the first example, so we'll just move on to number 2, zahav, meaning gold. The zayin is Z. The comets is A with a line over it. The hey is H. The comets is a with a line over it, and the bait that without a dagesh is a B with a line under it. Eretz, meaning earth. This is going to, the aleph is going to be a rightward pointed apostrophe symbol. Whoops. The segol is an E, the reish is an R, the segol is an E, the tzadi is an S with a dot under it. Davar, meaning word. The dalet with a dagesh is D, the comets is A with a line over it. The bait without a dagesh is a B with a line under it. The comets is an A with a line over it, and the reish is an R. Shofet, meaning judge. The sheen is S with a downward pointed caret on top. The holam is O with a line over the top of it. The pei without a dagesh is a P with a line over the top of it. The tzere is an E with a line over it. And the tet is a T with a dot under it. Shofet. Am, meaning people. The ayin is a leftward pointed apostrophe-like symbol. The pathach is an A. And the mem is an M. And then lastly, heichal, meaning temple. This is hey, which is H, tzere, which is E with a line over it, except that it's followed by the mater yod. I mean, this is the mater tzere yod. So it's not a line over it, it's an upward pointed caret. The kaf without a dagesh is K with a line under it. The comets is an A with a line over it, and the lamed is an L. Hechal. Hechal. Next one, identify each of the following proper names in English by sounding out the consonants and vowels of the Hebrew word. Note that an initial yod in a Hebrew proper name is usually rendered by the English letter J. Note that the vowel kametz chatuf does not appear. So what they're saying about the English letter J is like, it used to be that Yahweh was transliterated Jehovah, right? Joshua is Yehoshua. So that y sound, that yod at the beginning, is usually transliterated using a J rather than a Y. So keep that in mind as we go through these, all right? So, the first one is Avraham, which they've already told us is Abraham. That's a clue as to the identity of Sarah. 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 This one's a little tricky, maybe. This is Shemuel. Shemuel. Samuel. Number 4, Avshalom. Avshalom. This is Absalom. Canaan. Canaan. I'm thinking this is Canaan. Canaan. Yosef. Now remember what the instructions told you. The initial yod is usually transliterated with a J rather than a Y. Not transliterated, but turned into a J when it's made an English name, like a name you would say in English. So Yosef is going to be easier to figure out if you think Joseph. You get it? Joseph. Number 7, Yonah. Yonah. Again, we're dealing with a name that we're familiar with the beginning with a J, because that's a yod at the beginning. And it's Yonah. So if you think of it as Jonah, you've got the answer, Jonah. Next one, Yehudah. Yehudah. Again, we've got initial yod, so you know that this is probably going to be a name you're familiar with starting with a J. So let's replace the y with a j, and we have Jehudah. Does that give you an idea what this is? Judah. Natan. Natan. This is easier to identify if you remember that older biblical studies grammars are accustomed to saying that the tav without a dagesh is pronounced as th in thin. Now, modern Hebrew speakers they don't pronounce it that way. It'll be just the ordinary T sound. That's why I said this is pronounced Natan. But if you pronounce it that older way, Nathan, that gives you an idea of what this is. It's Nathan. Yehonatan. Yehonatan. Again, we'll replace that initial yod with a J. So if we pronounce this Jehonatan, what do you think that is? It's Jonathan. What about Binyamin? Binyamin. This is not an initial yod, but maybe because it's the beginning of a syllable, it comes through as a J. So in our English Bibles, so if we replace that yod with a J, we have Binjamin. Benjamin. Yardain. Yardain. Now that's interesting. Yardain. So I don't know what this word is. I want to say Jardan. Maybe this is the Jordan. That's my guess. Jordan. In fact, you know what? Let's look it up. Here is a very well-respected Hebrew lexicon called BDB, Brown Driver Briggs, and I'm going to look up Yardain. Jordan. Yep. Okay. So that was a little tricky, but we got it. Jordan. Yardain. All right. Next up, Hevel. Hevel. Now this again is interesting. I don't recognize this name, but I would call it Hebel or Hevel. So here again, let's look it up in the dictionary, Hevel. This is the BDB lexicon again, and we're looking up Hevel, vapor or breath, but that's not what they're asking in this case. Oh, duh. Able. I should have remembered that, because Hevel is the word that is translated vanity in Ecclesiastes. And we learned that that word means a vapor or a breath, and that's also, a lot of people think that's why Abel is called Abel, is because he is so brief. His life is so brief in Scripture. He's like a breath. But anyway, this is Cain. And this yod is not pronounced like a J, is in our English translations. And the only clue I can give you here is that we just dealt with Abel. So what is Cain? It's Cain. How about Aharon? This one you may not recognize, but if you think of the hey with the vowel under it as another A, right? Think of a name that starts with AA. Aharon. It's Aaron. What about Shaul? This is the infamous Saul. How about Sheol? Well, that's interesting. Sheol. The only thing I can think of is that this is Sheol, the grave, the pit. I can't think of a name. I mean, but it is often thought of as a name, the name Sheol. So maybe that's what they're saying. But this is Sheol. And I'm going to look it up just to make sure. Sheol with an aleph. Sheol. Yeah, it's the underworld. It's Sheol. Okay. Next up is Eli. Remember that Tsere is a long E, so we're going to start with E. Eli. And that's just L-I. It's Eli. This one's interesting. Iyov. I don't know what Iyov is. Let's try to look it up. We're dealing with Iyov. Oh, there you go. It's Job. Iyov. Daniel. That one's pretty easy. It's Daniel. Chizkiah. That's a little tricky. Think of that chet at the beginning like an H. And then we've got some vowel and then Z. It's starting to come together. He's Kia. He's Kia. It's Hezekiah. How about Aliyah? Well, remember, the yod is often made into a G when we pronounce these names. This is Elijah. This one is Shlomo. And you just will not know this one unless you know that Shlomo comes through in our English translations as Solomon. Moshe, you've already learned this one. It's in your vocabulary. It's Moses. And then finally, Aden. I'll give you a hint. This is somewhere where you would plant flowers, or maybe trees, specifically trees of life and of good and the knowledge of good and evil. This is Eden. Aden. All right, so that's chapter 2 exercise. Let's move on to 3, syllabification and pronunciation. Syllabify the following Hebrew words. The answer to number 1 is given as an example. All right, so Av, Ra, Ham. All right, so this one is begins with a shava, so that's a vocal shava. So this is G. And then ve, ret, geveret. Next up is chukah, chukah. Well, let's think through this. We've got a chet with a kibbutz, and then we've got a dagesh in that kal. Now, is the kal a begad kafat consonant? No. So this can't be a dagesh lena. It must be a dagesh forte, and a dagesh forte doubles the consonant. So the first kaf is going to close our first syllable, and then we've got a second kaf that begins our syllable. So this is two syllables. Chukah. Next up is yabasha. Yabasha. So we've got a yod with a pathach under it, and then we've got a bait with a dagesh. How do we know that that's what is bait a begad kafat consonant? It is. So this could be either a dagesh lena or a dagesh forte. The way that we would tell the difference is it after a short unaccented syllable? Is that right? I'm going to refresh my own memory for a second and see if I can remember the rule that I taught you. It's dagesh forte if preceded by a vowel, right? So this is not at the beginning of a word, and it's preceded by a vowel sound rather than a consonant sound like a sheva. So we know this is a dagesh forte, and a dagesh forte doubles a consonant. So this is the syllable yav, followed by ba, and then we've got sha. Yab ba sha. Yav ba. Well, yab ba sha. Yab ba sha. Ka asher. So we've got a kaf with a dagesh lena at the beginning with a pathach under it. That aleph has a mark under it, so we know it's not a quiescent aleph. It doesn't close the syllable, so it's going to open a syllable. Ka, and then okay. So the first syllable is ka. The second one is ka, and then finally sher. Ka asher, 3 syllables. Milchama, this is going to be mem, hirek, and then because that shava under the lamed is a silent shava, it's going to close the syllable. Mil. Then the chet with a kametz under it. That's the next syllable. And then finally, ma, the mem with a kametz he. Mil, cha, ma. Reuven. This is the name Reuben, by the way. Reuven. All right. At the beginning of a word, a dagesh is vocal, so that's our first syllable. R. The aleph, followed by a shurek, is our second syllable. U. And then vein at the end is our third syllable. Reuven. Chek. All right. This is a chet with a tzere yod. That would be an open syllable, except that the kof, which is next, has no marking at the end. It's closing the syllable. So this is just one single syllable, chek. Uriah. This is Uriah. The aleph and the shurek make the first syllable, u. The reish, the hirek, and the yod make a second syllable, because remember, the yod is not a begad kafat consonant, so that must be a dagesh forte. So that first of the doubled yods closes the syllable ri, and then finally it starts the syllable ya. U-ri-ya. Shavu'ah. Shava at the beginning of a word is, sorry about that. The shava at the beginning of a word is vocal. So the first syllable is sh. Vu is the second syllable. Ah. Shavu, sh, vu, ah. Aleph with a composite shava under it is a first syllable. Ah. This is a noon with a pathach under it. And then the consonant after it, the chet, has a shava under it. So since it's following a vowel, it's a silent shava. So we know that the chet closes this vowel. And then finally, the noon followed by the shurak. So this is three syllables. Nach, nu. Anachnu. Tefillah. So the tate with the the tav with the dagesh, and a shava at the beginning of a word is vocal. So we know this is a first syllable. T. Fi. And notice the lamed has a dagesh in it, and since the lamed is not begad gefatz, it must be a dagesh forte, and the dagesh forte doubles a consonant. So this is two lameds, the first of which is going to close the second syllable, and the second of which will open or begin the third syllable. So t, fil la, three syllables. Tefillah. Torot. This is the plural of Torah, so laws. The tav followed by a holam vav is the first syllable to. The reish followed by a holam vav is the second syllable ro, except that it's followed by a consonant that isn't marked at all. So it's as if it has a silent shava under it, meaning it closes the syllable. To rot, two syllables. Mitoch. So the mem and the hirek, we know, is the beginning, at least, of the first syllable. The next consonant has a dagesh in it, and the tav is a begad kafat consonant. So is this a begad, or a dagesh forte, or a dagesh lena? It's not at the beginning of a word. It's following a vowel, not a consonant sound. So we know that it's a dagesh forte. That means that it is doubling the tav, so the first of them will close our first syllable, meet, and then begin our second syllable, to. And then the question is that final consonant, chaf, another syllable? Well, the shava at the end of a word is always silent, so this chaf closes the second syllable. Meet, toch. Laila. Well, the lamed with the pathach is followed by a yod with a shava. So this is the diphthong I. That shava closes the syllable, so lai, and then la. Two syllables. Lama'an. Well, the lamed with a shava, the shava at the beginning of a word is vocal, so that's the first syllable. Ma with a pathach. Notice that the next consonant has a vowel under it, and it doesn't have a dagesh in it. It can't. It's a guttural. So that means that main with a pathach under it is its own syllable. And then finally an. So an, three syllables. Mitzrayim. Mi, and then the tzadi has a shava under it, and since that is coming right after a short unaccented syllable, we know that shava is silent. Mitz makes a syllable all by itself. Mitz. The reish with a pathach under it. The yod following it does not have a dagesh or a shava. Remember, that means this is not the diphthong I. This is the reish with a pathach under it, ra. And then the third syllable is yim. Mitzrayim. Hitpalel. All right. The tav in the second consonant has a shava that's closing the syllable heat. The pei with a dagesh is following a consonant sound, not a vowel sound. So that's dagesh lena. So it is not a doubling. All it's doing is hardening the v to make the sound to make a p sound, and it's got a pathach. The next consonant is a lamed, and it has a dagesh, and lamed is not a begad kafats, so we know that this dagesh is a dagesh forte. It doubles the lamed. So the first one is going to close our second syllable, and the second lamed is going to begin our final syllable. So it's hit pal leil. Hit pal leil. Mamal ot. Mamal ot. Mamal lot. So here's the deal with this one. The shava at the beginning is vocal because that's at the beginning. So that's a syllable all by itself. The mem is followed by a pathach, and then the lamed has a dagesh. Again, the lamed is not begad kafats. So the dagesh is a dagesh forte. It doubles it. The first lamed, therefore, is going to close the first syllable. The second lamed is going to have a vocal shava and be a syllable all by itself because it's a vocal shava. And then finally, the ot. This is how I'm thinking it's syllabified. Mamalot. Mamalot. I'd be interested to know if I'm wrong about that. The shava mimalot. So it's possible that the lamed. Whoops. Let me delete the whole thing. It's possible that no, that really is it's got to be a dagesh forte. So I'm going to stand by it. Mamal laot, 4 syllables. Next one, chatat. So this chet has a pathach under it. The tet is not the begad kafats, so that dagesh is a dagesh forte, which doubles. So this is chat, and then ta. There is no Kametz Aleph vowel letter, so that Aleph is not part of this vowel. But it also doesn't have a mark under it, so it is a quiescent Aleph. But it can't... That's interesting. So it's quiescent, but it doesn't actually close the syllable. Chatat is how I would pronounce it. I would syllabify it this way. But that makes me think that the rule I gave you for the quiescent aleph might be a little bit incomplete, because I thought that the aleph closes the syllable, but actually in this case it's the taf that closes the syllable. So that's interesting. That's I think the right answer. If I'm wrong about that, let me know. Milate. So in this one, we've got a mem with a hirek. The lamed has a dagesh forte in it, so that's our first syllable. And then lay. So this is another quiescent aleph, and so therefore is silent, and it doesn't technically close a syllable. It's the consonant after it that does. Milate. All right. Pa'amayim. The pay with a pathach under it is our first syllable. The ayin with a composite shava is the second syllable. The mem with a pathach is the third syllable, and the yod hirek mem is the fourth. Pa'amayim. This is vat shalach. So vat is the first syllable. Shal is the second syllable, and then lach, vat shal lach is the syllables. Vat shal lach. Okay, now here, remember the kametz is a kametz chatuf when it comes immediately before the O class composite shava, chataf kametz. And that's what that composite shava under the ayin is. So this is a this is mo And then o, mad, mo'omad, mo'omad, mo'omad. Hamotzot, hamotzot. All right. We've got a mem with a dagesh forta in it, so that's our first syllable, ham. Then mem with a holum and a tsari with a shva, that's the second syllable, motz. And then the aleph with a holum vav followed by a tav is the third syllable. So ham motz ot, ham motzot. Vaikanu, vaikanu, vaikanu. So vai, kan, u, vaikanu. Magagel, we've got a vocal shava at the beginning, a resh with a pathach and a followed by a dagesh forta, and then a gimel with a tsere and a lamed. So rag gale. Vayit chabu, I think is how you pronounce that. Let's put it together and see if I'm right. Vai yit chab ba'u. So this aleph isn't quiescent because it's not followed by a syllable closing consonant like we saw earlier. So actually what I'm thinking is that I'm thinking that shava is vocal, making it a syllable all its own, and then it's followed by aleph shurek. So this is vai yit chab ba'u. Vai yit chab ba'u. All right. Ne'emnu. Well, we got a ne. We've got an followed by a mem with a shva under it. So this is two syllables so far. Ne'emnu. And then finally, yivada. The vav has a dagesh forta in it. So that's our first syllable, yiv. Va, and then da. Yiv va da. All right. Let me know if I got any of those wrong in the comments. Okay, identify each dagesh either as a forte or lena, and each shava either as silent or vocal in the following words. The number 2-1 is given as an example. So in the word bagacha, the dagesh lena is in the bait and the vocal shava is under the bait. All right, so in isha, we have a dagesh forta in sheen. And we know that because sheen is not a begad kafatz consonant. And we don't have a shava at all. In chatat, we have a dagesh forta in the tet. And we know that because the tet is not a dagesh, or is not a begad kafatz consonant. In batim, we have a dagesh lena because it is at the beginning of a word. Okay. In ittanu, we have a dagesh, either a dagesh forta or a dagesh lena in tav. How do we know the difference? It's following a vowel sound. And when it's following a vowel sound, it's a dagesh forta. All right. So this is a dagesh forta in tav. Hukah. Here, the dagesh in kof. Kof is not a begad kfat, so we know this is a dagesh forta. In kiseh, we have two dageshes. We have a dagesh forta, or dagesh lena in kaf, because the kaf is a begad kfat consonant, and this is the beginning of a word. And then we have a dagesh forta in samech, and that's because samech is not a begad kfat consonant. It can only take a dagesh forta. Malka. All right, so our shava is under lamed is following a vowel sound, so that's a silent shava. Why didn't that? Okay. And then we've got a dagesh in the kaf. And how do we know that if it's forta or lena? It's because it's following a consonant sound. We know it's a dagesh lena. This is a begad kfat consonant, and it's following a consonant sound, that shava under the lamed. So this is a dagesh lena. Mishpat. We have a shava under the sheen, following a vowel sound e. So this is a silent shava in sheen. That's not right. And then the dagesh in the pei is a begad kfat consonant, and it's following a consonant sound, the shava under sheen. So we know that this is a dagesh forta in pei. Ata, we have a dagesh in the tav. The tav is a begad kfat, and it's following a vowel sound, a. So this is a dagesh forta in tav. Davar. Dalet is a begad kfat consonant, and it's at the beginning of the word, so this is a dagesh lena, in dalet. We don't have a dagesh at all in the vav, it just looks like it. So this is the vowel u, the shurek. So that's not a dagesh at all. There is, however, a dagesh in the yod. So yod is not a begad kfat consonant, so that must be a dagesh forta in yod. Atena. We have a dagesh in the tav. That's a begad kfat consonant, and it's following a vowel sound, so we know that's a dagesh forta in tav. The vocal shava is at the beginning of the word. The shava at the beginning of the word is always vocal. And then we have a dagesh in the nun. Nun is not a begad kfat consonant, so this must be a dagesh forta. And then finally, higid. So we have a dagesh in the gimel. Gimel is a begad kfat consonant, and it's following a vowel sound, so that's a dagesh forta in gimel. And that's it. That's all the exercises in chapter 3 of our workbook. So I'll check the answer key and compare that to the answers I gave you, and if I got any wrong, I'll note so in the description. But otherwise, and if you see that I've given you an all wrong answer, please do comment in the comments below, and that will help me to improve this in future recordings. But otherwise, hopefully this has been helpful to sort of internalize and better master the concepts that we learned in Lecture 2. In Lecture 3, we're going to get to start to form and memorize words, particularly nouns. We'll be learning about Hebrew nouns. So until then, lahitraot. See you later. I've been your host, Chris Date. And thanks so much for watching The Apologetics, where we think together through what we believe, why we believe it, and not something else. If you've enjoyed this episode, please click the thumbs up, like icon, the subscribe button, and the bell icon to receive notifications when new videos are streamed or uploaded.
Either way, come back in 2 weeks for the next episode of Theapologetics, streaming live on YouTube every other Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific. Until then,